you courageously break the pattern, take the action, speak up in the meeting, get visible, and continue to solidify that reputation that will support you and your career for literally years and decades to come. It's not about becoming better at your job. It's not about changing yourself. It's just about letting people better see what is already there. Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new here, I'm so glad that you have found the show. Welcome. My name is Jess. I have been hosting and creating this podcast since 2018. When I started it, I was a corporate strategist. I worked in the 9-to-5 typical corporate role, corporate job. I had a very successful corporate career. And now, since starting the show, I'm no longer on that career path. I do this show full time, and I'm a full-time coach for women in the corporate space. And I help women build confidence and find their voice and become powerful leaders. One of my big guiding goals of this show and of my work and of everything I do is to help more women become leaders faster. And whatever the word leader means to you is good enough, right? So for some women, that means they want to become executives. Maybe one day they want to be in the C-suite. Maybe one day they want to become a CEO. For some women, it just means that they want to have more impact in their role and feel like they're really delivering at a level that represents all of their talents and potential. Whatever becoming a leader means to you, I am here to help you do that, because being a leader has really nothing to do with your title. It's all about how you're acting and who you're being. And I'm so pumped for today's episode because we're talking about one of my favorite topics, which is standing out in meetings and making a really powerful impression in meetings. And I'm pumped about today's episode because we are getting really close to doors opening for the Art of Speaking Up Academy, which is so exciting. So I'm going to give you a quick update on that. I'm going to share a brief announcement on a new free video course that I have out in honor of the launch of the Art of Speaking Up Academy. And then we're going to dive into the topic of visibility, which is so huge and so important for your career. And what I really want you to know, even before I get into it, even before I dive in, is that even if you don't feel confident or you feel shy or timid, or you struggle to have a voice in meetings, it doesn't mean that becoming more visible in meetings and having more of a voice in meetings is not available to you. In fact, it is. And that is the work that I do. The women I support in building confidence and finding their voice are women who feel like that might not be possible for them and feel like they have a personality type and a way of being in the world that makes that particularly hard for them. And I especially love speaking to women like that because that's how I was in so much of my corporate career. And that's a really just big part of my overall personality is a quietness, an introversion, a desire to retreat from the world. And so I deeply understand that. And even though we're all kind of at different parts of our journey of how we relate to that part of ourselves, I always understand that piece because it's still a piece of me that I just relate to differently at this point in my life. So anyway, on to the announcements, and then we'll dive into visibility. So as you might know, if you've been listening to the podcast, doors are opening for my signature group program, the Art of Speaking Up Academy, and they will be opening next week. So enrollment will open on Tuesday, May 10th, and the last day to enroll will be Monday, May 23rd. So you will have about 2 weeks to sign up for the Art of Speaking Up Academy. However, If the group fills up before the end of the 2 weeks, then enrollment will close. So if you know that you want to be a part of this group, I definitely recommend joining sooner rather than later. If you're new and you haven't heard of the Academy and you're wondering what it is, the Art of Speaking Up Academy is my cherished, beloved group program. It is a coaching and professional development program. And the goal of this program is to help you do two things. One, build confidence, and two, become a stronger communicator in your job, and especially in those meeting rooms. So I have created a comprehensive curriculum where I guide you in the program through the inner work on building confidence, as well as some of the more tactical work on building super strong executive communication skills. And what I love about my program in particular and the work that I do is it's all about helping you find that confident, commanding, powerful voice in a way that's authentic. I think there's so many messages out there and so many trainings out there. And I cringe just thinking about this because this was such a painful part of my own professional journey. But there's so many programs and trainings out there and corporate thingies out there that are kind of guiding you to find a confident voice that is this fake alpha voice that doesn't feel like your true voice. And what I am so proud of in my own work is it's about, yes, helping you find a confident, powerful, commanding voice, but one that feels like you. It's about a voice that represents a really strong connection between the words you're saying and how they sound and who you feel you are deep inside your heart and your soul. Because when your voice comes from that real connection, that's when the power in your voice is actually powerful. The fake voice with the mask and feeling like you have to be bro-y or do corporate speak or whatever, that is not your strongest voice. And I know this so deeply to be true. And that is why I love this program so much, because it's about helping you find that powerful voice that feels like you, that feels authentic, that feels sustainable. If you are ready for that, and if you want to take this work deeper, then tune into the podcast, mark your calendar. Enrollment for the Art of Speaking Up Academy will be opening next week, like I said, on May 10th, which is a Tuesday, so the day that the podcast episode comes out. In honor of that, and in honor of the launch of this program, I've created a free video course, and it is only available during the launch. So if you want the free video course, get it now, don't wait. It is called The Beginner's Guide to Powerful Communication. And in it, I break down the two big pieces of the puzzle that you need to have in place in order to become a stronger, more effective voice in the meeting room. What I see so often in my work and with my clients is that they're stuck because they're focusing on the wrong things and they don't have that crystal clear understanding of exactly what it is they need to focus on in order to begin growing the confidence muscle and improving the quality of their communication. This training will clear that up for you and help you understand what the path to becoming a super powerful communicator looks like. And that path and understanding that path is incredibly valuable because when you become an effective communicator, it propels your career forward. I'm going to be talking about that a lot in today's episode, but when you are a strong, effective voice in the room, it not only makes you more effective in the work that you do, it not only makes you feel amazing and confident, it not only has you enjoying meetings more and feeling less stressed, but it builds a powerful reputation. People begin to see you as more authoritative, as more effective, as more of a leader. And when people begin to see you that way, it is that reputation and perception that pulls you upwards, right? That has people keeping you in mind for opportunities, pulling you into bigger and bigger things. I believe this was one of the reasons that I got promoted so quickly is because of my ability to communicate, because of my communication skills. And I want to help you develop that as well, because it is such a powerful engine for your career. So to get this free course and to get started on that journey, head over to jessguzikcoaching.com/free resources. You will see it right at the top. It's free, it's short, it's video, which is one of my favorite things. And I'm looking forward to hearing how you like it. I'll drop it in the show notes. And now we're going to talk about visibility, which is such a fun topic. I thought of a really fun way to explain this to you. And I'm excited because we're going to be talking about both your career progression and this idea of speaking up and using your voice as a way to power the growth of your career. But we're also going to be digging into the mindset and some of the fears and some of the emotions that you might experience that might make it difficult for you to become more visible. And I'm excited about that because my hope is that as you hear me talk about some of the challenges that you experience as you're trying to speak up more and trying to get noticed more, you start to realize that those things aren't insurmountable. They're not these like big scary things or these huge shameful secrets that are going to keep your career stuck forever. They're just a part of your messy human experience that you can get better at navigating, that you can learn to grow through, and that at some point in the future, they might not feel so big or so hard or so scary to you. And that is what is so important to me. And I feel a little emotional talking about that. I just like feel a little bit of tearing up happening because I just feel like there isn't enough of a dialogue around how scary it can feel for us to speak up and put our voice out there. And I think that when you begin to realize that like you're going to be okay and like nothing is wrong with you, and even if you feel really scared and unsafe, like you are going to be safe and you are going to be okay and you are going to figure it out, it can just bring you so much relief. And so like I get emotional talking about that because even though our professional lives on the surface, you know, they're maybe not the most important things in our lives. Like I think the most important things in our lives is our relationships and our loved ones, including pets. I do think that our professional lives challenge us in really deep ways and can challenge really deep parts within us. And that can sometimes cause a lot of pain and suffering. And I just think there aren't enough voices and perspectives out there helping women hold themselves compassionately and support themselves and get support through some of that suffering. And I just feel like that is so important because as women, we struggle with so much, we're dealing with so much, we hold so much. And so when we run into these tough experiences, these scary experiences, these vulnerable experiences, I think we really deserve to come to this knowing inside that it's going to be okay. And I personally think as a podcaster, that's one of the biggest gifts that I can give to anyone who listens to this show is to help you come closer to the knowing that it's going to be okay. So if the idea of visibility and using your voice more in meetings feels scary, if the idea of applying some of the things that I talk about on the podcast feels scary, if whatever you're dealing with feels big and insurmountable, I just want to message to you that while it might feel really heavy, there's a really good chance that it's going to be okay. And the more you can open yourself up to that as a potential possibility, the more resources you'll have internally to support yourself through the difficult experience. So that is just such an important and powerful message for me to share with you. And with that, let's dive into it and let's talk about it. And before I talk about it, in case you are just tuning into this episode and you didn't listen to episode 182, this is part of a mini series. So in episode 182, I talked about the 4 pieces that help you exude power and get noticed in meetings. They are visibility, authority, captivation, and thought leadership. Those are the 4 pieces that form the core of your communication skill set and the core of what helps you get noticed in meetings. And today I am deep diving into visibility, which I'll talk about what it is. But if you haven't listened to episode 182, I definitely recommend going back and listening to it because it's going to help you understand this episode even more deeply. It will deepen your understanding. So even if you don't want to go back to it now, even if you just want to finish this episode, that's totally cool. But when you're done, if you haven't heard 182, go back and listen to 182 because it's going to take all of this and help it sink in deeper. And you want it to sink in deeper because the deeper it sinks in, the more you'll be motivated to challenge yourself and stretch yourself outside of your comfort zone and really make contact with that voice in you, that woman in you who is bold and brave and ready to speak and step up as a leader in those meeting rooms. Okay, so I'm going to start by defining visibility for you, and I'm going to explain to you how I think about it, and I think it's going to help you understand the role that it plays in your career, because I think sometimes like we know that just like speaking and having a presence in meetings is important, but I think we underestimate how important it is and just how much it impacts all these different facets of our career. And then I'm going to talk about what might be getting in the way between you and having the level of visibility that will support an upwardly mobile, thriving career. So that is what I'm going to be doing in this episode. And so let's start with a definition of visibility. So visibility, remember, is just one component of standing out in meetings, and it is literally the component of being visible. All visibility means is that instead of being quiet, you said something in the room, and because you said something in the room, you are more memorable to the other people that are in the room, and you are less likely to be forgotten. So they are more likely to remember she was in the room, she was on the project. Now, the way that I want you to think about visibility is in two ways. I'm going to share two ideas to really help you understand it. The first idea that I love sharing is this idea of 100 meetings or a year's worth of meetings. I want you to imagine that every week you have the same meeting on your calendar. So you have that meeting, let's say 50 times in a year, and you never speak in that meeting. So 50 meetings go by, and it's the end of the year, it's December, Christmas is coming. The other people in that meeting room are going to think of you differently than if you spoke in every single one of those 50 meetings. They're even going to think about you differently if you spoke in half of those 50 meetings, if you only spoke in 25 out of 50 meetings, right? They're going to remember more of you being there, and they're going to have more of an understanding of who you are, how you think, and what you're able to contribute, like what your capacity is, right? So visibility is this idea that the choice to speak or not to speak in every single meeting you're in is adding up. It's stacking. So maybe one meeting won't necessarily make or break your career, right? But when you think of all of the meetings, for sure, whether you're a voice in the room or not is going to have a significant impact on your career. Now, one of the reasons that visibility is most important is because it feeds reputation. Reputation is how people think of you in their minds. And in your career, especially if you're in a corporate role, in a 9-to-5 type of role, and you are interested in advancing and getting into higher positions, then what senior people think of you and what they hold in their minds as your reputation is incredibly important. It's not just important for this role that you're in and this company that you're in. It's going to be important for the rest of your career, because those same leaders who are sitting in those meetings now, they might be your reference when you're out in the job market interviewing for a big like step up opportunity, maybe 3 years from now, right? And they're like, hey, who are your references? And you're like, oh crap, like, do I have good references to help me nail this role? I really want you to think of like this meeting that you're in today is not only going to help you power your next promotion or getting that next project that you want to be on, but it's going to help power things for years to come, because you being visible in that meeting means people remember, oh, she was there. And here are the kinds of things she contributes. Here's what I know about her thinking, about her intellect, about her problem solving, about her capabilities. And what I see with every single one of my clients, every single one of them, even if you think this isn't you, this is probably you. They are so smart and they have such interesting, useful, valuable things to share. But those things don't always get seen because they're still in this place where they haven't learned to become more visible. They're still working through those fears, right? And so I really want you to open your mind to the idea that you might have these really effective, powerful contributions in you that aren't seeing the light of day and aren't feeding your reputation and feeding your career because you haven't yet gotten more comfortable in the spotlight. Here's how I want you to think of visibility. Here's an analogy that makes so much sense in my mind, and I think will make sense, and it'll hopefully motivate you to be willing to exit your comfort zone, willing to get more visible to fuel your career. So the way that I think about it is that, like I said, in the professional world, the way that leaders and bosses and executives and higher ups think about you will impact the future of what happens to you in your career. That's just how it works in these organizations where there are higher and higher levels. And so the way that I think about it is, let's go inside the brain of a leader, right? Like, let's just say that maybe it's not your boss, because that can be really loaded. But let's just say one of your boss's peer, let's just say they're the chief marketing officer at your company, right? So there's the chief marketing officer who often sits in meetings with you. Maybe you're not on that team, but maybe this chief marketing officer, she is in a lot of the meetings you're in, on a lot of the projects you're on. She knows that you exist. She knows you're a person, right? In fact, she knows that a lot of people at this company exist. She probably works with tons of different employees and leaders in the company. So the way that I think about it is, this chief marketing officer has all of these humans that she's worked with, and she knows who they are, and she knows their names, and she knows a little bit about them and what they do. And the way that I think about it is, in her mind, it's like she has a painting of every single person in the company that she works with or that she interfaces with. So I literally want you to imagine a wall filled with paintings of portraits of all the different employees, and one of them is you, right? You're one of the people that she works with. So here's how I think about visibility. Anytime you speak and draw attention to yourself, the paint on your portrait becomes a little bit brighter. So what I'm thinking about is, like, when you have a really old photo or just like something really old and the color fades and it's like no longer as colorful and it kind of like just starts to lose its boldness. I want you to think about all these paintings in the mind of this chief marketing officer as a little bit faded. They're like not super bright. And every time you speak in a meeting, the coloring of your painting gets a little brighter. So when she looks at all the wall of all the people and she sees you, your portrait is popping. It's brighter. It's a little bit easier to notice. And this is why visibility and speaking is so important, because just like that painting gets brighter and brighter, your reputation gets brighter and brighter and stronger and stronger. And just like the painting doesn't actually change, right? Like, it's not like you're going in the painting and being like, I'm going to repaint my haircut, or I'm going to make myself look more attractive than I actually am. I'm going to put a filter on my painting, right? So it's not about becoming better at your job. It's not about changing yourself. It's just about letting people better see what is already there. When the painting is brighter, we notice it faster. We can see the shapes and the features better. None of the features changed, right? But we now can see them. We miss out on seeing them and appreciating them as much when the colors are faded, because we don't notice it. And then when we do notice it, it's harder to see. Similarly, the more you speak, the more people see the talent, the thinking, the problem solving, and the leadership that is already there. You're showing them what's already there. This is why visibility and speaking and contributing is so important, because when you don't do it, you risk slowing down your career trajectory, not because you lack the talent, but just because you didn't create enough opportunities for people to clearly see the talent. You didn't make it stand out enough. So I want you to think about every time you feel scared or small or uncomfortable in a meeting and you challenge yourself and you say something in the meeting, that portrait gets a little bit brighter. And it doesn't even matter if you say the perfect thing or you have the most perfect contribution every time. It literally doesn't matter. And I think this is also where people can get a little bit tripped up Visibility is literally just about being seen and being remembered. And of course, when you share high quality things, you will be seen and be remembered. And I'm going to talk about that in the future episode that's in this series on thought leadership. However, even sharing ho-hum things, even recapping what other people in the meeting have said, even just asking questions, if you do those plain Jane kind of speaking up things in meetings, it will have a massive positive impact on your reputation compared to just being silent. I think people really, really underestimate how valuable visibility is. And they think, oh, well, I need to share something super genius because if I'm just like sharing something obvious, then I'm not adding value. How does that help my reputation? How does that make my portrait shine brighter? But I really want you to think about if you're in a meeting and there's an employee in a meeting asking really important questions or recapping what's said in the meeting in a way that helps everyone move forward. What the leaders in that room know is this person is engaged, they're here, they care, they're paying attention. And not only that, but those questions and those things that you add help other people in the room. It helps the project. We don't always need to be sharing the most innovative things. Yes, those things are important. Yes, there's a time and place for those things. But I really, really, really want you to think about this. Unless you work at NASA, maybe you do. Look, if I have someone in my audience who works at NASA and who goes to the moon, then a lot of my analogies will fall apart and not work for you. But like, unless you work at NASA, there's not going to be like wildly heavy innovation required to do your job well. Doing your job well is probably about moving the ball forward courageously, right? We don't always need heavy innovation. Yes, like I said, there's a time and place for it, but I really want you to think about what you're doing in your job and think about, is this at the level of a scientist or an inventor or someone going to the moon, or is this at the level of a business function, right? Like, which it probably is, like sales or marketing or operations or HR or legal or whatever it is you do. And I don't want to diminish your job and say it's not important. All of our jobs are important, right? It's just that I think we can set the bar in this really crazy, unrealistic place that doesn't even reflect where it actually needs to be for you to do your job well. So please don't underestimate the power of those plain Jane, simple contributions in meetings, right? Asking questions, summarizing what's been said, contributing an additional perspective here and there. It matters and it adds up. And the beautiful thing is, not only does it add up to help your reputation and help your portrait shine brighter, but it adds up to grow your confidence, because the more you do it, I guarantee you, if you do it 100 times in a meeting, by meeting 100, it's not going to feel nearly as scary to you. And so back to this idea of the wall of portraits, and they get brighter every time you speak. Then I want you to think about, if there's a wall of portraits and yours is super bright, and then that CMO, let's say, has a big, exciting position opening on their team, they're going to look at the wall of portraits. And obviously there's lots of wonderful people on the wall, but if your portrait is brighter than all the others, that is where their eye is going to go, right? Similarly, if you're out in the job market and you need a really powerful reference to land a high power, appealing job, and you call up the CMO and say, hey, would you be a reference for me? If your portrait is shining so bright on that wall, you're going to get a way better reference. They're going to be able to give you a way better reference. So I really want you to think about, the brighter your portrait shines, the more that it feeds your career. And one of the simplest things that you can do to help your portrait shine brighter is lower the bar and simply create the goal of becoming more visible. Now, I want to briefly touch on what gets in the way of becoming more visible. And I've already shared one concept with you, which is setting the bar way too high, being really perfectionistic about it, and also underestimating the value of simple contributions. And like, this is so, I mean, when you really wrap your head around like how valuable it can be in a meeting to ask a quote unquote stupid question, it like, you'll see that it's the opposite of what you think. Like, you think you shouldn't ask the question because it's going to make you look stupid. And I think you should ask the question because it's going to make you the hero in the room. Because if you have a simple foundational question, either someone else has it or there's something that could be better clarified, and your question will catalyze that. So I just have such strong beliefs in this area. I think asking simple questions, sharing simple contributions, like I think we underestimate how much value those create in a room. Okay, so anyway, what gets in the way of being visible in meetings? There are really only two things that it can ever be. And this is a framework that I come back to over and over in my work. It's either something to do with confidence and mindset, or it's something to do with communication skills. So here's how you know what's preventing you from being visible. And if you do my video course, The Beginner's Guide to Powerful Communication, it'll dive way deeper into this, right? But if it's something to do with mindset and confidence, then your experience is probably something that feels like fear of people judging you, uncertain about speaking because it's not your meeting, or you're more junior, or you feel like you're not at the center of the project, right? Fear of that feeling of just like exposing your voice and your ideas, and that kind of like making you feel like naked. Like sometimes I call it like naked turtle feeling, like when a turtle's in the shell, they're very comfortable. Sometimes speaking up feels like you're a turtle taking off the shell, coming out naked, right? So that can make it just really hard and scary to get visible and speak up in a meeting room. So that's mindset and confidence. If it's about communication skills, what you will experience is something like, I'm having a hard time sharing my idea clearly. I feel like every time I speak, I'm winding around, beating around the bush. People are getting confused. Here's another way that you know if you have a struggle with skills is that you'll speak and then someone will get confused, and then someone else in the room will clarify what you said, and people will understand that other person. And that means it's a communication skills problem. The words aren't quite coming out in a way that's landing succinctly, that's a hard word to say, succinctly and effectively for your audience. So it is almost always one of those two things that gets in the way of visibility. But the beautiful thing is those are both things where you can learn and grow. And I will tell you, just so you know, the skills bucket is the easier bucket to work on. It is the quick win. Communication skills are not that hard to learn and not that hard to master. I almost think of communication skills as like sort of like learning tennis, right? It's probably not that hard to like learn the swing. And if you have time and you have a good instructor to practice the swing over and over again, right? It's the mindset and confidence piece that takes a little more time and a little more care and a little more thoughtfulness, because facing that naked turtle feeling, taking off your turtle shell, right? Facing the fear of people hearing you speak and them potentially having thoughts or judgments about it, right? Like all of those things are much harder, in my opinion, to work through than the skills piece, right? And if we go back to this analogy of the tennis match, it's kind of like the difference between learning the swing, right? And knowing it really well, but then having to go into like, let's say the pressure of like a highly competitive tennis match with a bunch of people watching you, right? It's like, you know how to play tennis, you know how to swing. But when you go into that match, your confidence starts waning and you feel scared and you put pressure on yourself. And so it's not that you're missing the skills, it's that internally your mindset isn't in a place where you're supporting yourself to get to the optimal performance. And I love working with both of these pieces, skills and mindset, because I believe that they are the magic combination. The skills are what help you speak in a way that lands super effectively with your audience and really makes you sound like a leader and highly credible. But the mindset is what helps you not stay stuck in your old pattern, not hide, not retreat, not crumble when you experience a wave of fear or a big wave of self-doubt or a feeling like the situation that you're in feels a little bit challenging and maybe even a little bit on the border of overwhelming. Mindset is what helps you navigate that experience so that if that happens, you don't necessarily fall back into a stuck pattern of being like, this feels too hard, so I'm just not going to do it. but instead you courageously break the pattern, take the action, speak up in the meeting, get visible, and continue to solidify that reputation that will support you and your career for literally years and decades to come. So that, my friends, is visibility, and it is really important, and it is what I suggest you adopt as your starting point on your journey of finding your voice. If you listen to the cake episode, this is very similar to just get good at making cake before you assemble the cake and frost the cake. Just learn to build that muscle of joining in the conversation and not stopping yourself before you've even given yourself a chance. That brings me to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to dive deeper into this, and if you want to better understand the path ahead to finding a super confident, powerful, and effective voice in meetings, grab my free video course, The Beginner's Guide to Powerful Communication. I will link it in the show notes. It will be available just for the next couple weeks, so make sure to grab it now if you know you want it. And be sure to tune into the podcast next week, because I will be announcing the open enrollment for the Art of Speaking Up Academy, where you will get to work on both these skills and the mindset of finding a powerful and effective voice in meetings that helps you propel your career forward. And it's really my goal to help you do that in a way that honors your authenticity, in a way that feels true to you, and in a way that feels good and not bad. Because finding a confident voice is an inherently empowering and pleasurable thing. It feels better to speak with freedom and confidence and authenticity than it feels to be in that pattern of hiding. And that's where I'm trying to get you, is into that good feeling, empowered place. That is really my driving force inside the Art of Speaking Up Academy. So tune into the podcast and mark your calendars. Doors will be opening next week. And in the meantime, I'm wishing you a beautiful day. I'm wishing you such a wonderful rest of your week, and I will catch you in the next episode.